Invincible Season 2 Part 1 just finished, which at least somebody gets to finish around here since my balls are bluer than they have ever been. Not just because of the sacred oath I took this most holy of months, but since Part 2 is coming to us sometime early next year. Who knows when that actually is, but I'm here to say, make them bluer. Turn my balls into the goddamn Pacific Ocean. Turn my balls into Pokemon Sapphires. Whatever you do, just take whatever time you need, Studio Maven and Amazon, to get this show to the quality you made the first part, because that is the greatest comic book show of the year. My favorite animated project of this year. It might be just behind Guardians if we're counting all comic book media this year. If I'm just being honest, this show is fucking incredible in pretty much all regards. It's so good that after years of hearing from my colleagues about how good this comic was, I finally got my ass to start reading it. I got up to where it seems we left off with the first part of the second season. Take into consideration that it very loosely follows the timeline in the comics, but around issue 30 is where I imagine this season stops within the comics, and I can confirm, by God, this series is awesome. I'd say the comic doesn't really seem special, and I'd say it's actually almost pretty derivative, but at this point, what comics and superhero shit isn't? But it's so good in execution and just digging deep on certain subject matter that in the comics can sometimes just get glanced over. So I highly recommend the comic by Robert Kirkman and Ryan Ottley. It's from 2003 to I think 2018. Shout out to Corey Walker's work also on the books. We pick up with the show giving us a look at an alternate dystopian universe where Mark teamed up with Omni-Man to get Earth to comply with the Viltrumite Empire, and we are introduced to a new character, Angstrom Levi, who has the power to portal between dimensions and uses his power to gather different versions of himself throughout the multiverse to gain their respective knowledge of each universe, to take what works like cures to diseases and technology and share them throughout the multiverse to save lives. It starts off pretty philanthropic, so he enlists the help of the Mauler twins to make that happen, but after the plan gets shut down by Invincible, it leaves him quite disfigured. Mr. No-Hos looks like that's gonna alter his trajectory as a character, leading him down a path for revenge. But we have to get back to our main character, Mark Grayson, Invincible, who is basically dealing with the aftermath of Omni-Man, not only being severely outclassed and beaten to a pulp by his father, but also having the fear he would one day become just like him, and everyone around him kind of believing the same thing. We can see Mark getting better at being a hero, and so asking for more responsibilities from Cecil. The new Guardians of the Globe is kind of sucking ass, so they put the Immortal in there for some new leadership and get Bulletproof as a new member. All the while we see Debbie just slowly losing her composure following Nolan's last words. You know, he basically called her a pet and a bunch of other more shit that was super demeaning before his departure, and they do such a good job of showing her dealing with the mixture of different pains she's feeling with her feeling of loss and anger and insecurity. What makes it worse is Mark graduating, leaving Debbie more isolated than ever and further accelerating her already nasty alcohol dependency. She even ends up going to the support group for superhuman spouses, and just when she thought she'd made a new friend, once she reveals her husband was Omni-Man, there was not much more support left. So Debbie is very understandably going through it this whole season, and they don't shy away from letting us sit in that pain with her. These intensely human moments are what the show's strongest ability is, in my opinion. We also have Adam Eve going through it with her parents. They're in kind of financial strife, and her father blames her for it after the destruction to Chicago displaced him with his job, and he is now having to work at Burger Mart to make ends meet, and he kind of blames her and just superheroes in general for those miscomings. He even highlights when she tried to help earlier in this episode by rebuilding infrastructure in Chicago that it was actually unstable and caused people to get hurt, which is reinforced when in her hubris and recklessness during a battle she causes an elderly couple's car to go off a bridge. So it's a thing of attempting to do a good thing but inadvertently still causing pain because you're not competent enough or ready enough to do something, leaving Eve in a type of moral dilemma. Mark, on the other hand, is doing fairly well this season. You know, he just graduated and got accepted into the same college as Amber, and even finally got to clap some cheeks, which is a great scene, not just because of the cheeks that got clapped, but because of the preamble, like the little 2-minute convo they have before about, yo, are you gonna get too excited and kill me? Not necessarily about the topic of sex, but the little shit that people will talk about, you know, people in real life and extrapolate on from the comics, something that I think a lot of fans like to do that tends to get glanced over in most comics. They actually go into, not to an insane depth on it, but they hang on things like that enough that it adds weight to whatever the characters do, leading to you caring more about what's happening and also feeling kind kind of refreshing for a show to do. Like in episode 2, Mark has to go to Atlantis, since when you kill the king, you have to essentially marry and bang the queen in a stadium in front of all the Atlanteans to make up for that, which is just crazy. At least that's how it was in issue 15. Mark was also supposed to defend her from this like Kraken type monster, but since the law of it be your own was in effect, a guard had been wanting to clap her cheeks for a very long time, so Mark basically tossed him a layup in the comic to do so. In the show, however, Mark is just supposed to defeat the monster and is kind of getting wrecked as per freaking usual, so he tries to pull a little Christian Bale here, but that's when the monster gets loose and starts killing people, and Mark's human side kicks in and he goes back and enters sicko mode on this kaiju. But just the frames of those fish slaughtered is enough to add weight to the scene, which in any other franchise I feel would kind of just be glanced over, so I really appreciated that. We also get the lore of Alan the alien, him reporting back to the coalition of planets about Mark, and then being informed by the council member Thaddeus about a suspected mole in the council, but after getting left in critical condition from getting jumped by 3 Viltrumites, it would all but confirm that Thaddeus was that mole. I wouldn't have let that shit happen to Alan if I was there, honestly. I would have stood on business and I would have skibbity wrecked these Viltrumites, I swear to God. Basically, the culmination of this first part of season 2 was Mark receiving a message from what looked like it was Seance Dog, but it was really this little insect alien fucker, Nuzzalot or Sir Nutsalot, I forgot his name, but he says he needs Mark's help for an oncoming meteor shower that will destroy his planet, but this ends up being a psyop courtesy of Omni-Man, who had just partaken in one of the coldest and most raw opening sequences in all of television, okay? We see he was about to throw himself into a fucking black hole because of what he did on Earth, which is some insane shit, but he saw the ship of Thraxans about to get sucked in and save them, and he then, upon their request, became their leader and even gave Mark a little purple brother, which goddamn, you Nolan, you have Debbie and you decided to clap some grasshopper cheeks. What's going on with you, player? And Mark and his reunion was so complex, with Mark being happy and almost relieved to see him, but also rightfully irritated and enraged at his seemingly dismissive and callous demeanor. This was all so that when they would send Viltrumite soldiers to go after Nolan for leaving his post on Earth and having a child with a lesser life form, he could train Mark so that they could fight them off, but they swoop in sooner than expected, and we get some pretty insane and intense action, gruesome as hell. The action in the show is always so top notch and the animation is pristine, but because Mark holds back, he gets shanked by a Thunder Sea, we'll say, shout out to Ryan Reynolds, which Nolan disposes of quickly. It isn't until Lucan comes through and did some like Mortal Kombat ass kick to the spine of Nolan that puts him out, and this interaction ends with General Krieg coming through and telling Mark his father will be executed and that he has a choice to kill a couple people on Earth so that Earth complies with Viltrumite's rule, or they will kill millions. That's essentially how part 1 ends. I mean, we have Debbie rejecting any more payments from Nolan's books to loosen the grip Cecil might have to leverage against her and Mark in the future. Donald is finding out that he's been altered somehow. We have Eve returning home seemingly with her tail tucked between her legs. So we have not only a very satisfying and promising part of the story, we also have some pretty sizable cliffhangers. Besides even the main characters, a lot of stuff they were touching on with the secondary characters like the Guardians of the Globe was compelling. What with Monster Girl's plight of getting younger, although you know she's been an adult and wants to be treated like an adult, and Robot finally being a human, being able to feel things for the first time and feel what it's like to be a human and alive. Duplicate relating to Immortal because of how many times they both died. So although it might be my only gripe with this part of the season or the show that a lot of the secondary characters we see aren't used for much more than seeding certain things for future events, they service them well enough for me to be satisfied. The music in the show too was just used amazingly well, from Karma Police to Avalanche, just serious bangers. Now it's kind of hard to judge because quite literally this is not the real end of season 2, so if part 2 does come out and it's complete diarrhea city, then well, this stuff will all change with the context of having the show having led to something bad or, you know, unsatisfying, which I don't think is going to be the case at all. So with all that, I'm giving season 2 part 1 of Invincible an extremely fluctuating 8.5 to 9 out of 10. I'm saying I'd love to give it a 9 out of 10, but I want to reserve my judgment for the second part to see how they conclude this. Otherwise, I can't wait for more and I will continue to read Invincible. I want to say it's only 144 issues long, so it shouldn't be something too out of the question to catch up on. If you want a sneak peek for part 2, issues 30 to 45 would probably be a safe bet to look into. All in all, I'm satisfied, but let me know what y'all thought if you watched it, whether you liked it or not. If you have any predictions for part 2, you know, supposedly Josh Keaton is in the voice cast, and I believe the Marvel team up comic was teased and some promo, so I'll just leave that there. That's it. If you liked the video, leave me a thumbs up, comment down below, and if you want to subscribe, I always appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope all of you guys are well, and I'll see you in the next one.